truth.
And then he did a thing where he brought out an Asian. He said, "My family's here. I want to bring them on stage," but they were Asian people.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Who saw that coming?
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell. Yeah.
Pretty smart.
Honor thy mother and father. You never pretend other people are your parents.
That's
My mother said that.
Words of wisdom there, Chippa.
He's just trying to have fun with the whole thing. Jeez.
Jeez,
He should be. God should smite him.
yeah, really? Where's your father?
Encyclopedia salesman on the road.
Yeah.
And we get to Jamie Foxx, who we could all agree is just
mother loves him.
just godlike. Jamie Foxx is
I heard he has a
godlike.
huge cock, Jimmy Fox.
Yeah, good for him.
I respect that.
People treat this guy like he is the greatest thing that has ever graced the fucking screen.
I thought that was him.
Yeah, that's what he thinks.
Right.
He absolutely thinks he's amazing. And they pump him up like that. Oh, he's just great.
Is this it right here?
Mm-hmm.
With his Trayvon fucking shirt.
Oh, he went with the Trayvon.
Of course he did. Now, here's my fucking problem. Anyone want to jump in?
We already know it.
Yeah.
It's one word.
MTV wouldn't allow certain people to wear certain other political statement shirts up on their stage. You just know they wouldn't allow it.
They actually, they cube out everything. They fucking...
Like products and shit like that. But
well, no, they... All right, your point, sorry. I'll shut up.
No, if you went out there with a political shirt, I mean, there have been people in the past that have, gotten told not to wear certain things, and then he comes out with this Trayvon thing. He goes, "No justice, no peace," and "no" is KNOW, but the NO is in red. It's just no justice, no peace. What do you think about justice when there's a court case going on? Like, don't worry about the justice. It'll fucking come out. It's not justice for Trayvon. It's justice. Just justice for everyone, for the truth to come out.
It's also the Sandy Hook kids around Trayvon.
Well, of course it is. But Trayvon's giant fucking, in the middle because he's much more important.
Even though this Zimmerman case has been blown out of proportion because of the racial angle.
Of course.
It's still, I don't find him to be a likable guy, Zimmerman, in the sense that whatever happened is this guy, Trayvon Martin, was not bothering him.
You don't know that.
But I believe that. Like, just from that phone call, I believe that he was a neighborhood watchman who made a judgment error. He turned out, I don't
think he made
wrong.
a judgment error at all. I think if there's somebody in the neighborhood and there have been break-ins in the neighborhood, and that's why he's part of the neighborhood watch, and he sees somebody who he deems out of place in the neighborhood, it's his job to question the motherfucker.
But I understand that, and I understand why he did. I understand what made him. I would look at a guy like that and probably think that too.
Sure.
But he was wrong. The guy was going to get skittled. Even though it's like whenever a cop shoots somebody and that person's unarmed, the cop is wrong. I know why the cop did it. I don't think the cop did it because he's evil, but you're either right or you're wrong about something. And in this case, he was wrong. And
he was wrong at what point? At the shooting him point? At the point that he paid attention to what he was doing in the first place? Like, where do you decide he was wrong?
I think he was wrong. He obviously was pursuing the guy. And again, I know that he didn't have to stop because 911.
There was no pursuit.
An unarmed guy.
You're getting a lot of this news out of the news.
No, but an unarmed guy got shot. That's the truth. It wasn't like Trayvon Martin was on the phone with his girlfriend. And he was worried about this guy keeps looking at me. He was a guy walking through the neighborhood. He had no gun. George Zimmerman had a gun. And now this guy's dead. However it happened, then here's what his judgment error was. He should have pulled his gun and showed it before it got to that.
Why?
Which would have probably, because that would have prevented the problem. Nobody would approach you with a gun pointed at them. I don't believe anybody would. If he fired in defense, then his mistake was allowing himself to get his fucking ass kicked while he had a pistol on him.
Well,
that was his judgment error. Instead of pulling it out, not even killing the guy, but showing him, I got a pistol, dummy, and I'll shoot you.
That's not really the way it's supposed to work.
But this is not the way it's supposed to work either.
Well, it's called self-defense. And the bottom line is, he went to check this guy out. He's walking around the neighborhood. He went to check him out. and as he was walking back to his vehicle, Trayvon pounced on him and started beating his face in and pounding his head on the fucking sidewalk. At the last moment, he decided, I'm getting fucking pummeled and I'm going to be knocked out. He pulled his gun out, one shot, and Trayvon's dead.
But his walking back to the vehicle thing is, and I do think Trayvon was on top of him, and I do think they had a fight. I believe that. But how do you know that's the way it really was, as opposed to them being face to face and having a confrontation? Like, because his story is that the guy, it makes him a lot less believable or a lot less empathetic, Zimmerman, if they had a head-to-head confrontation and he had a pistol and an unarmed guy who really wasn't bothering him winds up dead. It's really hard to...
Unarmed doesn't come into play in a self-defense case when you're getting your head smashed against because the arm is your fucking hands banging a man's head against concrete.
So that becomes
using the sidewalk as a deadly weapon.
No, I understand that, and I understand why you'd use your gun in that situation. But they weren't two guys that bumped heads in a club, and then they started fighting outside. I'd be 100% on Zimmerman's side if that was the case. And I don't think Zimmerman was this terrible racist. But the bottom line was he was one of these fucking neighborhood watch guys who just, instead of, you called the cops, he shouldn't have been that close to him.
He did call the cops.
I know that, and that's what he should have done. But he shouldn't have been that close to him on foot. He shouldn't have been. Or if he was going to, then he should have been able to handle that situation without fucking pulling out his gun and shooting the guy. He should have showed him the pistol.
In the past, and he said it on the phone, in the past he goes, oh, these guys always get away. Because they always get away. So he was watching where this guy was going. You know, it's easy after the fact to go, oh, he's unarmed, he's just got his Skittles, he's walking home. He don't fucking know that. He sees a guy with the fucking hoodie up, walking around the neighborhood, wearing pretty much fucking burglary fucking clothes. I love that. Hoodie's up for Trayvon. Look at every closed-circuit security camera. It's a guy with a fucking hoodie up. Knock it off how that's the new fucking dress code for tribute.
But all of those guys aren't him. I know what you're saying, but it's like
he fit the fucking profile.
But it was But it was wrong.
What?
But it was wrong because he was. I firmly believe he wasn't there to rob.
Okay, all right.
Like I think that the profile that Fat Nick, when he hit those guys with bats, was right. They were there to rob cars.
Yeah,
he was right. He profiled them and he was correct. This guy profiled incorrectly.
So how did it end up with Trayvon banging his head against the sidewalk?
Because this dumb motherfucker didn't pull his pistol out and
you can't pull your pistol out like that. He wasn't posing a threat at that point. You can't pull your pistol out unless your life is in danger.
Well, then if you have a pistol and there's a guy that doesn't and you're following him,
he doesn't know he doesn't have a pistol at that point.
But I'm saying he doesn't.
Yeah.
If you have a gun and the other guy doesn't have a gun, and somehow that other guy gets you on the ground when you're approaching him, you're a dummy.
That goes to show you the fucking restraint.
Who shouldn't have a gun.
That shows you restraint, if you ask me. The guy didn't want to pull his gun out. He's not brandishing his gun at every guy with a hoodie walking down the street. That would be irresponsible, if you ask me. He's keeping tabs on where this guy is until the police show up. In that interim, the guy turns around and starts punching him in the face.
But you got to look at it from the other guy's point of view, too. This guy's just walking somewhere, and this fucking asshole is following him.
Following is not a fucking crime.
Yeah, but
following is not turning around and punching him in the face. That's a crime.
Yeah, but you understand as a person how enraging it would be if you're walking through and some fucking douchebag is following you. You're like, what the fuck does this guy want? What if he didn't know what this guy wanted? Like, let's just say Zimmerman's account is a bit, you know, as told by him. Let's just say that Trayvon Martin's walking home and this guy's following him, and he's like, why is this guy fucking following me? And he turns around, there's a confrontation, and Zimmerman goes, where are you going? What are you doing? And this guy's like, who the fuck are you? And slugs him. Like, I'm not saying he should have slugged him.
Exactly.
But you don't understand why he'd be fucking bothered that this guy is following him at night for no reason?
Perhaps, but you know what?
Like, you understand George Zimmerman's point of view, like why he pulled the gun and shot him, but how come you can't understand Trayvon's point of view, like when you're walking home, why this would be fucking worrisome or bothersome?
It might be, but unfortunately, That's the world we live in. When you see a guy, a black kid with a hoodie walking in your neighborhood, and you're the neighborhood watch guy, that's the guy you have to check out. Sorry. And it's not Zimmerman's fault. It's every thug that dresses like that to fuck with people.
It was I'll tell you why it's Zimmerman's fault. Because if he was qualified to handle this situation, it would not have gotten to that point.
He called the police and was keeping an eye on who he suspected might be doing something wrong. That's his guilt?
Then he turned around and walked away?
That deserved to get a punch in the face?
No. But that's his story. I don't know the whole story. That's his account of it.
Also, witnesses, what the police saw after the fact.
I believe that he was on top of him. I believe there was a physical altercation, and I believe Trayvon was
the guy doesn't have any past history of fucking with people in Neighborhood Watch, of assaulting people during his Neighborhood Watch duties. The fact is, Trayvon escalated the violence. If he's being followed, that's one thing. You could turn around and you go, hey, asshole, why the fuck are you following me? To escalate it to a physical confrontation made it so George Zimmerman could defend himself. And that's exactly what happened.
Then George Zimmerman, George Zimmerman was not qualified to handle this situation or mentally, or would not have.
He called the cops and kept an eye on the guy. How is that not qualified?
Because he has a gun and he was getting his ass kicked.
Yes, that could happen.
If you have a gun and you're following someone and you get your ass kicked, something is wrong.
But that's the fucking... You're never going to win every fight.
Here's what that means.
Just because you have a gun.
If Trayvon had hit a little harder, this dumb motherfucker would have been walking with a gun.
Yeah.
Following a guy as the neighborhood watch guy.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him for being suspicious or even for calling the cops. I get it. I'm not politically correct. I get why you'd see a guy in a hoodie and go, what's he doing here? But once you make the decision to get out and follow him and make yourself a part of the investigation, you better be fucking qualified to handle that. And what makes you qualified is reading the situation well enough to not turn your back and get blindsided by a guy and wind up on the ground getting your ass kicked.
You're actually blaming the victim. That's amazing.
That's what everybody who's blaming Trayvon is doing. He's dead. Like, what stops us from fucking hitting cops? We know they have guns. Like, honestly.
I think there's also a law.
But I mean, man to man, like, what stops a lot of people. Me and you, we don't want to go to jail. But there's a lot of guys that literally are just afraid of getting shot.
Yeah.
Like, they're not afraid of getting arrested. They're afraid of getting shot. That's the cops' ace in the hole. It's not the legal system. It's the fucking gun they have in the moment. And we all know they have a gun. And that's the difference. He didn't know this guy had a gun. So if you're going to follow a guy, you better be in a position to let him know, look, I'm armed. You better let him know that instead of turning your back and walking away. I don't know where he went, though. Can you picture a cop just turning his back and walking? I mean, maybe. But if he was a cop, I think he would have handled that situation better.
Oh, a cop has
even an undercover
lot more training. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm talking. An undercover cop even would have handled that better because he would have known how to follow this guy. He would have known how to talk to him. And he would have known how to make it apparent that he had a weapon. And unless Trayvon was a maniac, I don't see him charging a guy with a weapon. I don't see you getting caught in a situation like that. I don't see you getting caught in a situation where a guy won't know you have a gun on a dark street, where you're going to turn around and walk away, if that's what actually happened, from a guy who I just don't see that. You think he's dangerous. So Zimmerman thinks he's dangerous enough to call the cops. He's safe enough to get out of the car because he has a gun.
I think if you want to say any mistake that he made is the fact that he didn't. I don't think he did think he was dangerous. I think he thought he was up to shenanigans.
Okay.
Or at least suspected that, it should be looked into a little more. That's what I'm saying. I don't think he thought he was dangerous, which it was a mistake on his part, I think. Other than that, I don't see this as him, just because Zimmerman has a gun, that made it so he's in the wrong for some reason.
He's not in the wrong because he had a gun. And again, he's not in the wrong because he profiled Trayvon. People profile each other all the time.
Yeah.
In this case, it was wrong. Sometimes when you profile people, it's wrong. It happens. I mean, I'm uncomfortable when I see 5 Middle Eastern guys getting on a plane. Probably every time in my lifetime,
course, yeah.
I've been wrong. And I understand that. It's, you know, profiling, there is a penalty with it. I'm not saying it's always right. We're wrong sometimes. The bottom line is he wasn't qualified to handle that because an undercover cop, I'm not saying with the uniform where Trayvon would have seen the uniform and said, all right, I'll talk to you. An undercover would have handled that situation, I think, better. I'm not saying an undercover couldn't have had this happen. But I think an undercover would have understood enough about the intricacies of following somebody, or what happens because I think he knew that Zimmerman saw him. Like Zimmerman knew that Trayvon was aware of him, so he didn't think like, well, I followed the guy and he doesn't know I'm here, so I'll turn around. He knew there was something happening between them. So if he turns around and walks away and gets blindsided,
well, he was going back to his truck.
Okay, but then he's remarkably unaware of his surroundings. And if you're in a dark street and you're getting out, where the fuck are you following this guy to? That all of a sudden you're like, okie dokie. How do you not have? You ever watch a cop on the street? You fucking watch him. He's got his hand on his gun all the time, so nobody can come up and snatch it. He'll be on the phone. Cops don't even realize they're doing it. Get their right hand on that fucking pistol. So this guy's in a potentially confrontational situation. And he doesn't have his hand on his pistol. I'm not saying he should brandish it and be an asshole like fucking Pesci, but the fact that he's so ill-prepared to use the weapon, which is the one thing giving him the balls to get out of that car and follow this guy.
Perhaps if they did have a face-to-face confrontation that escalated into yelling or whatnot, perhaps then he might have did some type of indication that he had a gun. Hand on his hip, pull his shirt back a little bit, something. But the fact of the matter is, they never had that face-to-face confrontation. It went from 0 to 90. It went from I'm looking at him, I'm watching him, he knows I'm here, he knows I'm looking, to I'm being punched in the face, I'm on the ground, there's someone on top of me beating my head in.
And that's his account. And that's his account, which
evidence shows that's
some of it's true, and I
probably accurate at least.
I believe the media was reprehensible. I don't think this is he's a terrible racist or that he was. I believe Trayvon was on top of him and hitting him. I'm not sure what led up to that. We only have Zimmerman's account, but I do believe that he was getting his ass kicked. So I don't say he's a terrible murderer who should be put to death, but he's not innocent. Because he was not qualified. This is what happened.
What qualifications are there for fucking neighborhood watch? Obviously, he's doing this for the good of his neighborhood, or a lot of people have accused him of being a little, rambunctious about a wannabe cop, they've called him, things like that. The thing is, he wasn't trained like a police officer. He wasn't supposed to be trained like a police officer.
But he was acting like one.
But he was acting like a neighborhood watch guy that's watching someone while he's on the phone. If put it this way, if he wasn't on the phone with the cops and decided to tackle this guy and had cuffs on him and thought he was going to do it that way, I might feel what you're saying. But this guy was doing everything a neighborhood watch guy's supposed to do. He had called the cops in the past on people. The cops had shown up. He called them this time. He was keeping an eye on because why would you want to lose the guy you just called the cops on?
Well, that's the difference between a neighborhood watch guy and a cop.
He's
not a police officer. And I'm not saying he didn't have the right to follow him.
He absolutely did.
But this guy wound up dead. And it wasn't like this guy was some fucking some hardened thug who was the type of some guy.
He wasn't the 10-year-old they show on the fucking news.
I'm not talking about the news. I'm talking about as a guy.
For sure. Well, that's what everyone thinks. The impression you get when I say Trayvon Martin, in everyone's head, they see a little kid in a football uniform.
No, I don't. I see a fucking 17-year-old guy
with the fucking grill in his mouth, tweeting about fucking getting some weed and fucking bitches.
But that's what that doesn't mean that a guy who does that is not necessarily going to turn around and knowingly punch a guy in the face who's holding a pistol.
But that's not how he's been portrayed to the public.
But the media is irrelevant in this.
They're very relevant.
But I don't care about them. For me, they don't influence what I'm saying. I'm not here saying
they influence the way people are hearing what you're saying, though, and what I'm saying. It influences people hear me and go, "Oh wow," because all they have to base their opinion on is the crap they've seen on the fucking news.
But I'm not doing that. I'm telling you, I'm looking at Zimmerman.
No, I'm just prefacing.
I'm saying Zimmerman didn't handle this right. Because this guy wound up dead. If this guy
could have been Zimmerman dead, though.
I don't think if Zimmerman handled it right, he would have been. The reason I said that is because this is not that guy. If this was a guy who did fucking 8 years in jail for assault, and we all know what a fucking true thug from jail is, there are guys that will punch the cops in the face. There are those fucking guys. I would have a different opinion, but I don't think this was that guy.
Well, when you're beating somebody's head against the sidewalk, you're taking the chance that that person is armed and will fucking retaliate with deadly force.
And when you're following a guy at night, you're taking a chance that that guy is going to confront you and have a problem with you. So you have a gun. You had better be prepared to at least showing a gun is a huge deterrent. And I know you can't walk around waving it, but if you're in that confrontation, you better be ready to pull your... Because how did he know Trayvon didn't have a gun?
Exactly.
So then he was so fucking ill-prepared to handle the fact that Trayvon Martin may have a knife? He would have been stabbed to death.
He underestimated the fact that he would even punch him.
Then
he's
not... Then to me, he did something wrong. I know this could happen to a real cop or an undercover. I just don't believe it.
I agree with you in the fact that everything didn't go fucking lovingly during this. There were mistakes that were made. Obviously, things could have been done to prevent any of it from happening. But that's what happened. You can't say, oh, this shouldn't have happened, that he shouldn't have ended up dead. This is what happened. Now you got to work with why did it happen, and is he culpable for the death? Is he he's up for murder too? Will he be convicted of that? I don't see it. I see this as a case of self-defense.
See, I think it's in the middle. I don't think he's necessarily a murderer because I don't believe that he set out to murder this dude.
No.
And I don't believe that he was like, fuck this black bastard. I really don't think that at all. But I don't think that Zimmerman is just a victim of circumstance because when you have a pistol, you take a certain responsibility with that.
Sure.
And again, if this was a bar fight where they met outside and this guy just got in his face and started, I'd be 100% on Zimmerman's side. Fuck him. Or even if they were just yelling at each other outside of 7-Eleven and Zimmerman was taken off guard. But he wasn't taken off guard. He instigated this. He followed him.
As
he
a
called the
neighborhood watch guy.
Okay, fair enough.
That's like saying if you see somebody around walking in the hallways of your apartment and you don't do anything about it. You see somebody like
no, I'm not saying that. But he did something about it. But there's a breakdown in the system. Neighborhood watch guy went from behaving like an undercover. He's not an undercover. He wasn't qualified to behave like an undercover.
He behaved like a neighborhood watch guy. I don't understand how you're putting him in this situation where he had to act a certain way, like somebody that should just sit there and call the cops. He's got to keep an eye on this guy.
But look what happened.
Yeah.
The other guy wound up on top of him. Like, how dumb a guy are you if you have a gun and you're following someone and they wind up on top of you? You're a dope. You shouldn't have a pistol if you can't handle, if you don't know enough to have your pistol ready, especially following a guy who you think is dangerous enough to rob houses, which means he probably has burglary equipment with him, which means he at least has a fucking screwdriver. So you're following a guy who you assume has a weapon. He's assuming this guy has something. Maybe not a machine gun, but he's assuming this guy has something. And yet he's not prepared to use his weapon until he's having his fucking head beaten in. There's something missing from that picture.
I see that as showing very great restraint and responsibility as a gun owner. Yeah. You don't use it at all until your life is fucking being threatened.
No, great restraint would have been pulling it, or having his hand on it, or being ready to use it and shooting him in the leg. Or even the stomach. That would have been great. That would have been, I don't know. That would have been better restraint.
He had no reason to shoot him or even show his gun until his life was being threatened.
Well, then the fact that he got into the
Not
position.
threatened, his life was on the line.
Sure. But then the fact that he got into that, position and caught off guard so completely is where my problem with him is.
I can't believe you're writing off the fact that he was the one getting his face punched in.
But I'm not writing that off.
As like, oh, he's an asshole for getting himself in that position.
That's why I don't think he's a murderer. That's why I don't think he should be convicted of murder. Because I do believe he was getting his ass kicked. My annoyance at him is getting into that fucking position. I have no problem with him calling the cops. I have no problem with him even being suspicious, because I probably would have been. But in that gray area where he got out of the car and he followed him, and the next thing you know, he's getting his ass kicked and he has to shoot the guy. In there is my fucking major problem with his qualification to be doing this. You're a neighborhood watch guy. Watch. but don't follow. He's a wannabe cop, dude. He's one of
can-
these guys who wants to be more important than he is. I don't think he's evil, but he's one of these fucking guys who probably couldn't pass the police test, wants to be that guy. So his motives were probably a little bit more about himself. And a little bit more.
That. You can say that.
Well, then I have a problem with him.
But the bottom line and what the case is about is that the escalation of violence was started by Trayvon. The physical altercation was started by Trayvon.
He says that, yes.
And
how do you know that?
The physical evidence shows that too.
How do you know? And again, I'm not saying this is what happened, but how do you know Trayvon just didn't go, what the fuck do you want? And Zimmerman didn't push him. Or how do you know that Zimmerman didn't grab him by the shirt or do something that was physically threatening to him? Or how do you know Zimmerman didn't approach him aggressively and go, where do you go? Whoa, no, you're waiting right here. You're staying right here. Like, we don't, we only have Zimmerman's.
Well, you got his word, you got other ear and eyewitnesses. But
they only heard the fight, though, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't hear what led right up to it.
They didn't hear anything before that would have led anyone to believe that there was any altercation before Trayvon was hitting George Zimmerman.
Right.
So, I mean, again, you got to go with the evidence and the testimony of the people that are still alive. Sorry, but that's, I think, and I've looked at a lot of the shit. I've read a lot of the fucking shit on this case, and it really looks like a pretty good self-defense case to me.
That, which is, again, why I don't think he's a murderer. I don't see, even the cops that shot, who was it that they shot? Not Abner, they shot, who was the African guy who was, Mamadou Diallo?
Oh, yeah, Amadou Diallo.
I'm sorry, I thought they should have been, I obviously thought that they were completely wrong and,
really?
and had to be off the force because he pulled out a wallet. I'm sorry. You shot a guy who didn't have a gun. But I didn't think they should have went to jail because I didn't think they were out to murder the guy. I thought they made a horrible, horrible judgment error, which means there's a difference to me between that and being a criminal who goes to prison. But I don't think you can just keep your job. I think we, the public, have a right to say, if you have a gun, we have a certain expectation that you're going to get things right. And there are times where I can understand when you get things wrong. With Diallo, they made a tremendous judgment error.
It's always a fluid situation. You never get this black and white situation of, well, there's the line, now we can shoot, or there's the line, now we can escalate to this point. It's always a very fluid, very gray situation where you're not sure what you're seeing, what's going on. So you're never going to get this absolute, this is what happened and this is why and that's it. Like, there's always going to be this element of doubt, or what if I did this, or could I have done that differently and stopped that from happening? So, I mean, that's every situation.
But you're right. But when someone is an unarmed non-criminal and gets shot, you have a much...
A lot of times you don't know they're unarmed.
Oh, okay.
That's the big thing. And the law gives you that latitude that if you reasonably believe your life is being threatened, that your death is imminent for you.
Sure.
That you can use a weapon to defend yourself and use deadly physical force to defend yourself.
Absolutely.
It doesn't necessarily mean that if someone is only holding iced tea and Skittles, that they did not pose a life-threatening event to you.
But if you think somebody could be armed and it's at night and you're following them, then the only time you get to your gun is when they're on top of you, beating the shit out of you, then you did something wrong. Because you can't play cop and then all of a sudden act like civilian. Don't follow this guy. If you can't get, the only time he can get to his gun is when this guy's kicking the shit. Which means, if Trayvon Martin, if what Zimmerman says is true, if Trayvon had a knife, he would have stuck it in Zimmerman's back, and this dumb motherfucker would have died following a guy with a gun strapped to him.
And by the way, you never, ever would have heard of his name, Trayvon.
Agreed.
Nothing. You never heard any of this.
All that is, I agree with you 100%. The media, fuck the media. I'm not even about that. I get
He'd
that.
have been dead.
And I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is that imagine how unqualified you are to have a gun if you're following a guy and you handle it like this and wind up. If you're following 5 guys and one of them flanks you, There's a difference. I get it. You're following one dude, and you don't know if he's armed or not, and you're not ready to get to your fucking gun, and you think he might be a burglar? Then you're dumb.
That, I think, helps Zimmerman more in the fact that he didn't know any threat was coming at him until he was on the ground being hit.
But I don't believe that, because I think that you understand there's an imminent threat, or first of all, you wouldn't have called the cops, or you wouldn't have followed him. He thought there was something
Not
with this
a threat
guy.
to himself. He thought the guy was pulling shenanigans. Perhaps I'm sure his impression was, here's a guy who's probably gonna try to jimmy some cars or some shit like that, and didn't think, oh, here's a guy with a gun that's gonna shoot me. Here's a guy with a knife who's gonna stab me. You gotta expect there's gonna be some danger to it, but I don't think enough danger was spelled out with a kid walking with a hoodie on for him to pull his gun out.
But there was enough danger for him to be suspicious and call the cops.
Not danger, a threat that he was trying to break into a certain place.
If we look at a guy in a hoodie and we profile him, a black guy in a hoodie,
yeah,
and you think that he's dangerous to the neighborhood, he's going to break into a house, you think thug. You think
right.
A guy who's a problem.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
but am I going to pull my gun out?
If we're going to agree
at that point, no.
Maybe not at that point, of course not.
Nope.
But if we're going to agree that Zimmerman profiled him and we understand why, because we might have thought the same thing, then we have to be fucking honest about it and go, look, I would have thought this black guy's a threat physically too.
Right.
Not just a threat to a jimmy a car open, but a guy who's here to burglarize a fucking house and probably has a weapon on him, because most people don't go out and commit rapes or burglaries without something on them. You don't go out with just, So you have to assume that he thought there was some kind of a threat, and maybe that helps his case legally, but to me, morally, that makes him a dumb motherfucker because he got caught out there after following the guy. If Zimmerman was walking neighborhood watch and this guy blindsided him again, I'd have no debate. I'd have zero debate. But that's not what happened.
George Zimmerman also says, and from the call that he was making to the police, that Trayvon ran off at that point. He ran off, and that's when Zimmerman turned to go back to his vehicle. And I guess to get back in his vehicle and maybe use his car and drive around the streets to look for him. So when he saw him run off, I guess he felt that he was no longer an imminent threat to him.
How far was he from the vehicle when the assault occurred?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Exactly.
Because how far did he stray from his vehicle?
It wasn't that far. Once he was told that we don't need you to do that, and that's what the 911 operator told him. He said, "Are you following him?" He said, "Yes." He goes, "We don't need you to do that." So he then did start going back to his vehicle.
So he's on the phone. He starts to go. He sees him run off. He's close to his car.
Yeah.
But he can't get back to the car before this guy runs up on him.
He circled around, yeah.
And runs up on him and hits him. He doesn't hear him coming. No. He doesn't hear anything. He's just moseying back to his car, thinking there's a potentially dangerous guy out there that he felt threatened enough to call 911. And yet he just walks back to his car without looking over his shoulder, without being aware of his surroundings.
I think you're putting more importance on him feeling this danger part. I think he just felt he was in the neighborhood to break in, to do the break-ins that have been done in his neighborhood.
Then again, maybe you're right, but then he was a dummy to feel that way. Because anybody else would have felt there was a threat to this guy. No, there's no way I would fucking look at a guy who I thought might be a criminal and here to do fucking ill deeds and not think that he's going to be a threat to me if I follow him. How often do you follow a criminal and think they're not going to fucking confront you or have a physical problem? Of course you're going to think that.
Well, the gun issue, somebody that doesn't pull the gun out until life is absolutely in danger is being a responsible gun owner, believe it or not.
In some circumstances, I completely agree. However, a lot of times, again, cops pull out guns when things
cops
aren't
are allowed.
No, I know. but again,
you have to keep it concealed.
Right, you have to keep it concealed. But in a confrontation like that, you better let him know you have it. The only time he knows you have it is when you're shooting him. How did he catch you off guard like that? That's what bothers me so much about the Zimmerman story, is the fact that even if he's being totally honest, that he's a fucking dumb motherfucker who handled that incorrectly because he got caught off guard like that while following a guy.
Well, I guess we're just going to have to agree that Sam's an asshole.
I think even that was on Jamie Foxx's shirt. See, the phones are lit though.
Oh,
People
my
fucking
God.
are very polarized.
Wow, I didn't even look at that.
You followed that bus one time.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at that.
Exactly. And I turned away when the guy looked at me and turned. I'm like, I'm going home.
You felt like it could
Super
get ugly,
Jimmy.
right?
Absolutely. That bus driver's alive today.
You were Super Jimmy to a point, and then realized, you know what? This is none of my fucking business anymore. I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, but I'm not believing what the media says about it. I'm just using common sense, and there's something about his story which is bothering me. And there's no answer to that. The part that's bothering me, there's no answer to, other than George Zimmerman's word about it. And if his word is correct, and again, I don't think the man's a murderer, an intentional murderer. But he handled it wrong.
Here's the fucking problem, too. Lisa, Georgia, the authorities told him to stop pursuing. No, they didn't. It wasn't the authorities. It's a dispatcher from emergency services.
Which he doesn't have to listen to.
They don't have any authority whatsoever to tell anyone. The person that is best suited to decide what should be done on the scene is the person that's on the scene.
Sure.
They can't tell you to do anything. And they didn't say stop pursuing. As I told you, they said, we don't need you to do that. And he stopped. He was walking back to his vehicle at that point. So again, bullshit that is now fact in the ether because it's been repeated enough times.
Okay, and you're going to get people
not the truth.
You're going to get people who spit out that media bullshit.
Yeah.
But I do not have a fucking comfortable explanation of how this guy wound up on
He
the
got
ground.
blindsided.
Then he's a dummy.
Not really. He fucking got blindsided by a guy who was a little more crafty than he was.
A guy who was minding his business. Like, if you want to play cop, you want to play big boy cop, then you better be fucking ready to act like a cop. And you better be savvy like a cop, and you better be able to handle situations like a cop.
In his mind, maybe he wasn't playing cop. Maybe he was playing neighborhood watch guy who had called the police. Why would you call the police if you want to fuck up some black guy in your neighborhood?
Again, I don't think he wanted to fuck him up. I
So
don't think he wanted to.
He did exactly what he was supposed to do as a neighborhood watch guy. He called the cops. He kept an eye on the guy so he wouldn't just disappear. When the cops show up, you go, oh, where is he? I don't know. I don't know where he is. Oh, he's out there somewhere. Why not keep an eye on him?
But they didn't keep an eye on him long enough to not get beat up? Like, he was keeping an eye on him when he thought a house might be in danger?
Well, he was trying to keep an eye on him up until the time where he fucking ran off, and the dispatcher told him, we don't need you to do that, and he started walking back to his vehicle. He didn't run after him into the bushes.
Man.
He fucking saw Trayvon run off, started walking back to his vehicle. Trayvon came back around and blindsided him.
So you're saying that in a quiet situation like that, like, again, this was not inner city. This is a quiet neighborhood, quiet enough for people to hear, like you said, eyewitness or ear witness account. He didn't hear this guy or see this guy approaching. Like, I don't like the fact. None of us know how we'll act in that situation. But I can tell you, I'm jumpy enough to know that if I have a fucking gun on me, and I'm in that situation, my hand is going to at least be on the butt of it. If you're not prepared to draw your weapon on a guy who might have a weapon and you're following him, you're dumb. You're dumb. You shouldn't have a weapon, or you should stay in the fucking car because you're not qualified to know when to pull your weapon and when not to pull your weapon.
I don't know where his hand was at the time he got blindsided, but as far as having your hand on your weapon, off your weapon, he showed responsible gun ownership by not fucking using the gun until his life was threatened. You're not allowed to pull your gun out. You're not allowed to brandish it. You're not even really allowed to let people know you have the fucking thing.
Well, then you should have stayed in the car, because the thing that gave him the courage to get out of the car was the gun.
How do you know he just didn't think this thug was walking around the neighborhood, Jimmy and fucking doors open with a screwdriver, and not being a threat? He didn't see someone walking around with an AK.
Exactly.
Or something. He saw somebody that fit the profile of other people that had broken into houses in that neighborhood in the past, and was looking at him, calling the police, and giving the police the instruction as to where this guy was.
He does not get out of that car if he does not have a gun. I'm not saying he doesn't call, or he doesn't be a neighborhood watch and go, look, there's a dude walking around, I'll try to follow him in my car. He does not get out of that. Nobody, you don't get out of the car without a weapon and just follow a criminal. I don't buy it.
So what's the point then? If he gets out of the car because he has the gun, where are you going with that?
He has gun balls, but not gun savvy. Like, he has the courage to get out of the car, which I would have too if I had the gun. but then not the wherewithal to fucking keep his wits and not know if the guy's sneaking up behind him. There's something about that bothers me. It's the fact that he wound up on his back when he should have been so fucking aware of his surroundings, pursuing a guy, following a guy at night who he thinks is potentially dangerous, and yet he winds up getting blindsided, walking back to the car not that far away.
People get the jump on cops sometimes. People get the jump on police officers that do have all that training.
They do, yes.
It happens.
It does.
It does absolutely happen.
Yeah.
And it certainly, in this case, looks like that's what happened.
I just have more faith in a cop's ability to analyze that situation.
I would hope so, with all the training
but him and a cop,
you give him.
If him and a cop are going to have the exact same weapon, which has the exact same ability, then they should have at least the same training in using that weapon.
Not at all. No.
Or the same. I mean, he has a permit to carry.
Yeah.
It's not like he's got a permit to carry outdoors. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about a homeowner having a gun.
Yeah.
I'm talking about if you have a permit to carry a concealed weapon, you should have obviously maybe not a higher level of training than he had, because the fact that this happened proves to me there's a flaw. There's something missing, because
it's very rare that this stuff happens.
Okay, I'm not saying it happens every day.
Very rare.
And I'm not saying that, it's a reflection on all gun owners. I'm talking about this guy specifically.
And the way he reacted with his gun is absolutely the way you should react. You don't pull it out, you don't use it, you don't shoot it in the leg, you don't do anything until you deem your life is about to be snuffed out. Then you pull your weapon out and use it to dispatch the problem.
And
it's exactly what he did.
And had these guys just had a random confrontation coming out of a store or where there's no way he could have had I better be careful here, I'd be 100% with you. But the fact is, Zimmerman instigated this because he saw the guy.
No, I don't see it.
I know, but the reality is, if Zimmerman did not notice Trayvon Martin walking through that neighborhood, who really was doing nothing wrong, like, again, with Fat Nick hitting those guys with bats, fuck those guys. They were there to rob cars. Fat Nick was right. Zimmerman was incorrect. He made an incorrect judgment on this guy.
So you think when cops are driving around and they see suspicious group of people that they shouldn't check that out?
No, I understand
why. And when
why.
they drive off and no one was doing anything wrong, and they do drive away and leave them where they were, you see that as wrong.
No, but I think that their judgment on those individuals at that moment was incorrect. Of course it was.
Right.
If you stop somebody on suspicion and they're not doing anything, you're wrong.
Right. Okay.
So they are wrong a lot. But again, as long as the cops are respectful, as long as the cops handle it and treat people with dignity or whatever,
Does it seem like George Zimmerman was being disrespectful in following somebody that fit the profile?
No, but I'm talking about. But again, we're only saying that Zimmerman instigated. I'm not saying disrespectful. I'm only saying why I'm okay with the cops doing it. Zimmerman was profiling him, and in this case, Zimmerman was wrong. He was 100% wrong. He thought this guy was there to do something. This guy was not there to do that. He's either right or he's wrong. He's wrong. So he incorrectly profiles a guy.
Call the police, though. He didn't.
Yes.
He didn't
he does.
go after him to tackle him and cuff him.
I know, but he was wrong. He profiled. So he did instigate this because let's just say he looks at Trayvon Martin and does nothing. Trayvon Martin does not rob a house.
Right.
He goes, I think he was going back from the store, right? He watches the rest of the game. None of this ever happens.
Right.
So we do understand that Zimmerman, and someone could call up and go, how do you know he wouldn't rob a... But then you're just getting into a semantic show. I think we can all reasonably assume he was not there to rob
He didn't
a house.
have burglary tools on him.
He did nothing on
Right. Okay.
So Zimmerman was wrong. And Zimmerman incorrectly profiled. And again, I understand why you profile, but if you're going to take profiling to that degree where you get out of the car and follow a guy, then you better be qualified to defuse a situation. You better be ready. Again, if he was sitting in his car with his gun and fucking Trayvon reached in and grabbed him, I would have no problem with him shooting Trayvon in the fucking head.
But there didn't seem to have been any confrontation, discussion, way for him to handle a confrontation like that. It seems like they never got to even say a word to each other before Trayvon was on top of him.
But didn't Trayvon Martin's girlfriend say he was on the phone and he's going like, yeah, this guy is looking like Trayvon is looking at Zimmerman, looking at him and talking on the phone?
That's more testimony that's up for grabs.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
I heard that, but what exactly? Because I don't think Zimmerman, I think he was aware that Trayvon Martin was aware of him. Like, if you're following a guy's stealth, and
right.
you don't think that guy knows, there's a great difference in the way you're going to carry yourself.
Oh, I absolutely.
Than if you know that guy is aware and upset that you're following him.
Trayvon knew that he was being followed by
did Zimmerman know that Trayvon knew it? I think he did.
Because he was saying, he's walking around, he took off.
Then Zimmerman's guard, the fact that Zimmerman's guard was so fucking down a moment later is where my problem with him is.
But you're blaming the guy that started getting the shit punched out of him and his head banged on the ground for doing nothing more than keeping an eye on someone and calling the cops.
I'm blaming the guy who incorrectly profiled somebody.
In hindsight. It's incorrect in hindsight.
Okay, but
he didn't know at the time.
That's a high-stakes game to play when you got a fucking pistol. And if you're going to follow somebody, that implies that you had better be ready to do something if you confront that person. Following somebody, that's an action. That's not, I made a phone call from my house, or I made a phone call from this guard tower or my car, and then this guy ran back like a maniac and attacked me. You're taking it another level. You're following this guy. Now, we only have Zimmerman's testimony or whatever he said about exactly what set that. Of course, and he may be telling the truth, but of course he has to. Let's just say, for the sake of crazy argument, that he's fudging a little. Of course he has to paint the picture exactly that way so he's not convicted of murder. He has to say that. Like, Zimmerman would be an absolute moron if he said, Trayvon kind of approached me and said, what's wrong? And then I poked up, So the way it is painted is a perfect 100% crystal clear picture where Zimmerman is the victim. And Zimmerman is the one telling that story. But the stuff around it makes that harder for me to believe. And even if it's true, it makes it harder for me to be empathetic with him because it means he handled himself terribly.
But it does fit in line with the limited but other witness testimony that there is. You could say, like, oh, he would have to paint this picture that it was the perfect example of him being the victim. When in fact he doesn't know when he's saying something. When he gave his first testimony to the cops on scene,
right,
he didn't know if people were looking out the window and seeing it. And he's like, oh, I better watch what I say because obviously that didn't happen.
Right.
So he would be taking a pretty big chance fudging it right from the get-go.
Right.
And it's very hard to come up with a story right after something happens like that and stick with it. It just seems to me that he's being made the villain in this when, in fact, if it could have gone the other way and he ended up dead, no one would have known about it. No one would have cared. And the bottom line is, it does seem to me to be self-defense.
But it's hard to paint him as a victim
when the other guy's dead.
The other guy's dead.
Obviously,
but the other guy, Zimmerman was wrong about everything. Zimmerman was wrong about everything. He was wrong about this guy being in the neighborhood to do something he should have been doing.
I think that's the only thing he was wrong about.
He was wrong.
And in hindsight again.
Yeah, but hindsight, Monday morning quarterbacking. But when you have a pistol on you, you had better be fucking ready to be. Again, it's not like he was defending his own property. I would have so much more empathy for him if this happened on his front yard.
Well, he lived there, so
he was just following the guy because he wanted to play cop, and he wasn't qualified to play cop. He wasn't qualified to do that. And I know cops get caught off guard, but not many cops get caught off guard by a 17-year-old who's not that guy. If cops get caught off guard and get their fucking teeth knocked out, it's usually by some guy that's done fucking years. It's by a guy who's not afraid of cops. It's by a guy who's got a history of doing that. I'm not saying never. I'm saying, in a generalization, they usually don't get caught off guard by some 17-year-old who's just going. It's just not the type of guy that typically catches the cops off guard.
By the way, using the age is silly. I could fucking line up 17-year-olds that have done heinous, horrid things.
But I'm using the age because, again, there is a difference between, and again, a cop whose judgment I trust a lot more sees this face And again, somebody who's fucking 30 years old. I think a cop makes a better snap judgment in that. Not always.
I would hope so.
but again, they have the same weapon. So
it doesn't matter. He's an armed citizen. As opposed to a trained police officer.
Right.
Just because you have the same weapon doesn't mean you have the same training. Now, if he decides he wants to be a neighborhood watch guy, what is the criteria in training for neighborhood watch? I don't fucking know. Right. I don't think there is any.
Probably
I think
not.
they appoint you the guy, and that's what it is. I know there are some neighborhood watch neighborhoods that won't allow their neighborhood watch guys to carry weapons. I guess just for that reason. They don't want to...
Because that's what got him out of the
liability.
car. Well, but the weapon is what got Zimmerman out of the car.
Perhaps, yeah.
It's absolutely... Come on, you know he's not getting out and following that guy without a gun, especially if he assumes this guy might be dangerous.
He didn't seem to be a gunslinger kind of guy.
I'm not
though.
saying a gunslinger,
You know?
but again, you don't know what someone walks around. I'm sure he's a nice guy. But bottom line is, he wanted to play cop because he had the safety of that gun. He had that. He doesn't get out of the car without that. So without the fucking gun, he makes that phone call, and maybe he loses the guy, maybe he doesn't. But because he had the gun, he got out of the car. So the gun gave him the security to pursue this guy, even on a mild level. And yeah, he turned around and went back. But if that's what gives you the balls, then you better be ready, or at least aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to keep repeating ourselves. I just can't comprehend being caught so off guard with a gun and knowing that it's a dangerous situation. You know what I mean? Like, when you walk down 57th Street when you're going to XM, if you were ever happen to have something, would you have been so fucking... Like, if there was a guy you were suspicious of, could you picture 30 seconds later blinding yourself and turning your back on him and just waltzing away without any... I mean, come on,
no,
man.
I usually have my head on that swivel.
Yeah, because you're much more aware. Maybe you're much more qualified.
Maybe I'm much more paranoid.
Okay, okay. But if you're gonna get out of the car because you have that weapon, then you better be that fucking paranoid or that aware.
Yeah.
You know, again, I'm not saying he's a murderer either. I don't think he should go to prison for the rest of his life, but I think something has to happen. I don't know exactly what.
Perhaps mistakes were made, but again, I think the escalation of physical violence was on Trayvon's part. I think that George Zimmerman absolutely felt his life was in danger, in imminent danger at that time, and he used his weapon as anybody should in a self-defense situation. Yeah,
There was a big mistake here.
Yeah, I think so.
Jamie Foxx should have worn a Ray Charles shirt last night.
Well, Jamie Foxx, like, I understand why. Again,
Didn't this start with the Trayvon Martin T-shirt? All right.
That's why I don't mind as much him wearing that shirt.
I do. It's
because
fucking you're setting up the public with your opinion of something. It makes Zimmerman look guilty before the trial starts.
But again,
justice for what?
Here's what he knows.
So why doesn't a white guy go and wear a shirt for the other side?
Wouldn't that be amazing if a white guy wore shirts of white people that were victims of black violence?
But you could
would
do
be
that.
Amazing. No, you couldn't.
Most people wouldn't know who they were because
Yeah,
the press
exactly.
doesn't cover it the same. But I'm saying in the absolute, I don't have a problem with Jamie Foxx doing that because here's what he knows. There was a 17-year-old unarmed guy walking home who is now dead. And, you know, that is the reality of what happened, and I don't think Trayvon was a thug.
Put it like that.
If he was a thug, if he was a fucking Chicago gangbanger who got caught without his weapon in a prior dispute with a guy, I would have zero mercy for him.
So someone should wear a Zimmerman shirt on the MTV Movie Awards.
Yeah, try that.
Imagine that.
Yeah, you'd look pretty bad, but I wouldn't think you were smart to do that either because I wouldn't agree with it. Like, you can, but...
Is this going to cause a riot in the end?
Yep. I think
Let's
so.
see what happens.
And where's the riot going to be?
Let's see what happens.
Florida.
In,
Mostly Florida?
The trial starts this summer.
Is he in jail? Or is he out and he's on
He's
bail?
out.
Okay.
He's out on bail.
Do they know where he is?
Yeah. The trial starts in this summer. I really see an acquittal. Poof. And there will be some angry fucking people.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what you... Like, again, and
They're
I
not
think,
getting a second-degree murder on this guy.
I think you're right.
Not getting it.
They probably aren't. They probably aren't. But
They're
there
gonna
should be some
try
type
to,
of...
Oh, well, they try to plea the fuck out of this one. The prosecution's going to realize, oh, my God, we fucked up bad. Yeah. All right, we'll try to plead it out.
To get him some jail time.
Some jail time or anything. And God, I just hope he sticks to his guns and takes this right to the end with a jury, because I honestly think this is not a murder too, absolutely, and I think it's a good self-defense case.
I have a tremendous, again, if Trayvon had a knife on him.
Doesn't matter.
But to me, I'm just saying, as a person who lives in a society where guns are permitted to certain citizens, to me it does matter how people handle that responsibility. And I know mistakes are made, but when somebody winds up dead, it's harder for me to accept that a mistake was made, because if it was reversed, if this was a white guy walking through a black neighborhood and the same thing happened, I'd be fucking furious at the white victim. I'd be, and I know the shorts wouldn't be, but fuck the media. I'm only talking about me as a guy.
Yeah.
I'd be outraged by it and disgusted by it. And so, like, I should feel the same fucking disgust that this guy was killed when he really wasn't a criminal. Who cares what he tweeted, dude?
Oh, no,
we all
I
Twitter
understand.
dumb shit, and you want an image and to fucking make girls want to fuck you.
Believe me, I'm not saying that anything he
That's
tweeted
not a reflection
or
of him as a guy.
has any bearing on whether he should have been fucking killed or not.
Right.
I'm absolutely not saying that. That's more on the media and how they're presenting him as a young innocent black kid and much younger than he really was, much more vulnerable than he really was, and then they present George Zimmerman as a white guy. Just a crazy fucking gun flailing maniac.
Like the same way that, again, we keep raising the fat Nick, but he's still in jail. When they show the guy he beat up in his military uniform, it's like that guy was there to rob cars. Fuck that cocksucker. They do that all the time. They're repulsive. The press is repulsive.
Yeah, but again, I think it's a self-defense case, and I think when you point out certain things that George Zimmerman should have or shouldn't have done with his gun, you're pointing out responsible gun ownership and use in a deadly situation.
But in a situation,
he used it. He absolutely waited till the last minute, and that's fact because of the close proximity.
Right.
He was on top of him when he shot. He didn't take a pot shot at him from 20 feet away or anything like that.
That's why I don't think he's a murderer. That's why I don't think he should go to jail for the rest of his life.
But that's when you're supposed to, with the law allows you in self-defense to use a weapon.
But the gray area is, in that situation, when you're the pursuer and you are the instigator and you've made an incorrect assessment about somebody, then you had better be fucking aware of your surroundings.
I understand. If there's any mistake that was made, it's him slipping up and not being aware that he's ready to be blindsided. But that is irrelevant once the violence escalated, once Trayvon Martin escalated to physical violence. You're allowed to follow somebody, believe it or not. You're allowed. You can't stalk someone. But if you're following somebody, you're allowed to do that without the threat that you're going to get your face punched.
So let's say what really happened was Trayvon said, "What the fuck do you want?" Stop following me, motherfucker, and pointed in his face. And then Zimmerman, when Trayvon went to walk away, grabbed him and goes, "You're not going anywhere. Stay right here. The cops are coming." And let's just say that. And then Trayvon punched him. Well, then the violence was escalated by Zimmerman.
That would then have to be thrown into the trial and see.
And proven, I know. But I mean, then...
But that isn't on the table.
But I'm saying, like, something like that is a very, very...
You could have a lot of ifs.
Plausible...
If he grabbed him, and then Trayvon... hit him.
Yeah.
But then there's so many hypothetical situations, and then Trayvon reaches into his jacket.
No, but that's
and Zimmerman goes, "Oh my God, I thought he had a gun," and he shot him. Then again,
but I'm not even being that dramatic.
It goes back and forth with every escalation.
I'm saying just one little moment that is not 100% vindicating for Zimmerman. I'm saying, I'm not painting crazy pictures. Like, what if Trayvon came up and Zimmerman kicked him in the balls? I'm not saying anything crazy. I'm saying the type of a confrontation that I would find plausible that could have happened where Zimmerman started it.
Could have, but
I don't think Zimmerman just punched him.
They ain't gonna want to hear hypothetical.
No, I know, and you can't prove that.
Here's the testimony they have. Here's the eyewitness and ear witness testimony. Here's what the cops found at the scene. Here's what happened. Here's how they found Trayvon. All of that.
Where did he shoot him? Shot in the stomach or the chest?
In the chest. All of that paints a picture of what happened. You can't just take what Zimmerman said. It's like, oh, all we got is what Zimmerman said. You take that with everything else. And believe it or not, the other stuff that might seem, nothing's as good as eyewitness testimony or that. Well, yeah, but when you take all that other stuff and put it together with what Zimmerman was saying. It does give the police, and it will give a jury a much better picture than me and you have sitting here at this moment.
Yes, and there's nothing that can fill in that gap. Gap. Whatever happened in that gap
right.
still makes me say his judgment stinks.
All right. Well, you could absolutely say that.
And the fact that his judgment stinks puts him in some way, he's somehow culpable. Because when you have again, I keep repeating it, but I think when you have that responsibility of a weapon to carry.
Yeah.
And you, like if you're home and a guy breaks into your house.
Right.
And he's unarmed and you blow his head off with a shotgun, well, fuck him. He loses the right to fair judgment. You know what I mean? You're 100% right to kill him in your house. I don't care what he's got or what his intentions are. If he's just walking through and he made a mistake and you kill him, you're right. But I think your level of fucking responsibility and culpability goes up when you have a permit to carry and you're using that permit to carry to give you the balls to get out of a car and follow someone. Common sense dictates. I think, again, you can't prove it in court, but you don't get out of that car unless you have the security of a weapon. He knows he's going to be okay. And it turned out that was the right move because that's what saved him, was having that weapon.
He could have been killed, sure.
But he wouldn't have gotten out of that car without that gun. And if he's going to have that gun and get out of that car, then he better have fucking better judgment. His judgment, and again, I know he doesn't have the same training as a cop, but there shouldn't be that much of a difference in the way you handle a situation if you have a permit to carry. A permit to carry is a huge responsibility.
Yeah, the thing is, it's very hard to compare a cop with an armed citizen. Actually, armed citizens have a lot more latitude with what they can do with a weapon than a police officer has. But the officers have a lot more training. And
a lot more ability to sniff a situation out. And I don't think a cop, even though they get caught out there, like that guy, we saw that footage, that horrible footage.
Oh, yeah.
The three Mexican guys or whatever attacking the cop and shooting him with his own gun.
I know, that was terrible.
It happens, and he let his guard down.
Yeah.
You know, but you look at that, and that was in a split second. You see how that can happen, even to a trained guy. You're like, oh, God, just back up, you asshole. What are you doing?
I know, it's so hard to watch.
Yeah, you see where he went wrong.
Yep.
But there's a difference between a snap moment like that and I just, you know.
We'll see this summer when the trial starts.
It'll be interesting if he takes a plea. It'll be interesting because his lawyer may go, look, you know, this is what the jury looks like.
And
It's 7 white people and 5 black people, or 6, 2 Spanish. You may get convicted and get 15 years in prison, or they're offering you 5. You'll be out in 2.5. What do you take?
They are going to pressure him because they know what's at stake if he's acquitted.
But what does Zimmerman do if they agree to put him in a certain kind of jail and keep him in segregation? Like, what does he do? It's a long piece of your life. But
I think he's going to go for the jury decision on this one, which, you know, it is taking a chance depending on how the jury is composed. Where, you know,
because he better get up and testify. He better fucking testify. If Zimmerman, I'm telling you,
that's a good question whether he would or not.
If anyone in that situation doesn't testify, I don't care what the Constitution says. You're shit. If you're accused of rape, and you don't testify in your own defense, you're shit.
Sometimes innocent people just don't come off very well.
I know that too.
Sometimes people just don't come off well when they're testifying in their own defense.
But no one comes off looking worse.
Yeah, than when you don't want to speak.
One of you guys have to admit you're wrong so you can move on.
Never going to admit it.
Who's it going to be?
No, well,
one of you guys have to admit it, you're wrong, and then we can move on.
We'll see.
Yeah. There's no real absolute right and wrong.
No,
we're not going to get to it.
Of course not.
Yeah. So he wore that shirt, huh?
Yeah. Thank God there was at least a lot of laughs at MTV.
Yeah.
Good debate. Who won the debate on Twitter?
Half think I'm right and half think it's amazing.
I won by a landslide, and I'm a complete idiot that knows nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say the same thing about myself.
That's it. And Jimmy has it right 100%. And he couldn't be more wrong. He's an asshole.
But it's really funny. Like, if someone's like, Jim's a liberal, like, is that what makes you a liberal? Like, are people out there who think you're smart? Are you that fucking, like, and I hate when people go, I don't like labels. But do you not hear that I'm saying I understand why somebody profiles?
Yeah.
I profile. I don't crucify. It's like liberals don't acknowledge any of that.
Right.
They
yeah,
don't acknowledge any. I side with Fat Nick for fucking because I'm saying I think this guy behaved wrongly. I'm a liberal. Like, God, you little fucking cunt. There's people that just go Ant's right and Jim's wrong, and that's fine. But you guys throwing around your little catchwords with your fucking faggot little Twitter names, you're just fucking cunts.
When you little scamps get together. Yeah.